Hello, this is Matt Grotta with Group 5, and today I'm going to talk about the hot coffee at McDonald's case. So, just some case details. The case is about a 79-year-old woman, Stella Liebeck, who was severely burned by a cup of coffee from McDonald's, which forced her to be hospitalized for about a week because of third-degree burns. Liebeck um, got her coffee from the drive-through window and was actually in the passenger seat with her with someone driving the car, and she was parked and trying to remove the lid from her coffee in order to put some cream and sugar in it. And as she attempted to pry off the lid, um, she spilled the coffee all over her lap, severely burning the inside of her thighs and buttocks. She was wearing sweatpants at the time, which helped keep the coffee against her skin for an extended period of time and injured her more severely. Her injuries required skin grafting and left permanent scars for a long time. She originally asked McDonald's for $20,000 to cover medical expenses and other expenses, including her daughter's wages that she had to forego. Um, and when McDonald's counteroffer was only $800, which is the most they will give to any claim, she had no option but to sue because that amount was not even close to covering her medical expenses. McDonald's typically serves their coffee anywhere between 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, which is extremely, extremely high and will give you third degree burns in about 3 seconds. So, from McDonald's perspective, McDonald's claim that people would rather have their coffee too hot than not hot enough, as you can always let coffee cool down before drinking it. Um, they believed in this motto and as a result always served their coffee very, very hot. They thought that the worst thing in the world was a lukewarm cup of coffee. In the past, McDonald's had already received um, over 700 claims that their coffee was too hot and causing burns. And in order to combat this, they designed tighter fitting lids, which actually caused Stella Lieback to spill her coffee all over her lap. And they also placed some warning signs on the cups of coffee saying that it was, in fact, very hot liquid. Um, they claim that these 700 cases were not enough to warrant further research on the topic because they serve millions of cups of coffee a week. And the 700 is very rare in the grand scheme of things. But clearly, since they did something about it, it's not that irrelevant and is definitely something they should have looked into further. So, the case outcomes Liebeck was originally awarded $160,000 in compensatory damages and 2.7 million in punitive damages. The 2.7 million was later reduced to 480,000, leaving her with a total of $640,000 to cover her damages and her pain and suffering. The jury found that Liebeck was only 20% responsible for her injuries, which is pretty low considering she did spill the cup of coffee, um, and that McDonald's had not done enough to warn customers of the potential dangers. So, some of the discussion questions with this in serving such hot coffee, did McDonald's act in a morally responsible way? What ideals, obligations, and effects should it have taken into consideration? Um, so, I think that they acted in a very immoral way, especially considering most of their competitors and most of the other people in the coffee industry serve their coffee around 40 degrees less than McDonald's. 40 degrees less can still, which is around 150 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, this Even at this temperature, the coffee can still cause third degree burns, but instead of taking 3 seconds to cause third degree burns, it takes around 20 seconds. So um, that way, it gives the customer a chance to clean up their spill and not severely injure themselves as Stella Liebeck did. Um, I think McDonald's, if they were planning on serving the coffee this hot, should have definitely made a better effort to warn their customers. It's it's pretty ridiculous the temperatures that they serve the coffee at, and is it's undrinkable at this temperature, and there's no warning. Even if there's a warning that the liquid is hot, there's no warning that it is way too hot to drink and that you need to wait for it to cool down. Um, so I think they act in a very immoral way and very irresponsibly by serving such hot coffee. Um, Liebeck was only 20%, was Stella Liebeck only 20% responsible for injuries? Do you agree with the amount of damages that the jury awarded her? And if not, what would have been a fair monetary award? So I think it's pretty fair to say that Liebeck was only 20% responsible for her injuries. Um, I mean, as especially as an older woman, um, trying to pry the top off of a cup of coffee is not always easy, and especially after they redesign the lids to fit tighter, it's pretty easy to let it slip out of your hand. Um, and then in terms of the amount of damages the jury awarded her, I think that it's a pretty fair amount. I think that the 2.7 million in punitive damages would have been very, very over the top, and that amount would not have been fair. Um, I think the amount awarded to her was fair because um, even after getting out of the hospital and moving on, her injuries did, she was still healing for about 2 years. So all of the pain and suffering that she had to go through, and all of the wages that was lost by her daughter, and all of the surgery she had to go through, I think it is a very fair amount that she was awarded in the end. And lastly, the last question is, McDonald's claims that most consumers would prefer to have their coffee too hot rather than not hot enough. After all, if it's too hot, they can always wait a minute before drinking it. Suppose this is true. How does this affect McDonald's responsibilities? Given that McDonald's serves millions of cups of coffee every week, how important are a few hundred complaints about coffee being too hot? So, just to start, McDonald's conducted a study um, about whether consumers want to drink the coffee right away after they get it through the drive through, or if consumers want the cup of coffee for the entirety of their trip and would rather wait a few minutes and then enjoy their coffee um, while it's still hot. And they found that most people coming through the drive through want to consume the coffee right away and they do not want to wait. So this kind of contradicts that their original belief. Um, but even then, McDonald's still assumes that consumers would rather their coffee too hot rather than not hot enough. Um, and if they wanted to go based on this assumption, I think it's crucial for them that they should warn the customers of this and tell them that it is recommended or they should definitely wait a couple minutes because the coffee is in fact extremely extremely hot. Um, and then given that McDonald's serves millions of cups of coffee every week, how important are a few hundred complaints about the coffee being too hot? I think these complaints are way more important than McDonald's saw it. Even though 700 compared to millions is not a lot, um, if 700 people, in fact, felt the need to complain because they were burned so bad. There's definitely more people who are having this issue, and definitely a lot of people who are burning their mouths, whether it's super severely or not, and not complaining. And it even shows, especially because McDonald's did, in fact, do something about this, that they knew what was going on and they knew um, that the coffee was too hot. And I think it was pretty immoral that they didn't warn the customers further. Just to kind of fix this problem, I think that one thing they could have done is they could have added maybe some options of how hot you would like your coffee, so the consumer is more aware of what is going on. So maybe adding three options: um, not too hot, hot, and piping hot, how they normally serve their coffee. And this way, at least the consumer knows what is going on and how, and that they should wait before drinking their coffee. Thank you.